Now, boys and girls, I think we're all able to agree that Doctor Who has been in decline over the last few years. Essentially, since showrunner Chris Chibnall came in and took over, it's just been one bad decision after another, completely and totally upending Doctor Who lore. And even if you still enjoy the show and still enjoy what Chris Chibnall did and what Russell T Davies is currently doing right now, there's no way to deny that the ratings are absolutely in the toilet. And it's one of them situations where this is something that's happened all across the entire BBC, and it's one of those things that this is causing them to fail miserably. And now we have none other than the current showrunner and former showrunner of Doctor Who, Russel T Davies, telling us the exact same thing, that if Doctor Who had not moved to the Walt Disney Company and got completely and totally Disney-fied based on the most recent episodes from the anniversary, if you want to call it that, well, boys and girls, it should not come as any shock there that this is exactly what's going on, because Doctor Who's showrunner says Disney Plus deal had to happen as demise of the BBC is undoubtedly on its way. He is flat out saying the BBC is going down in flames, and honestly, the people behind the showrunning of Doctor Who, Chris Chibnall and specifically, is one of the reasons why this came from probably the most popular show that the BBC had globally to something to where literally nobody, not even the hardcore fans, watch anymore, and this is absolutely hilarious. So Doctor Who showrunner Russell T Davies has issued some doom and gloom thinking behind the way the hit sci-fi series need to partner with Disney Plus. Really wouldn't call it a hit sci-fi series anymore. Speaking to the They Like to Watch podcast, that's weird. The Storybrand showrunner declared that the BBC is somehow, surely, undoubtedly on its way in some shape or on its way out in some shape or form, and additional cash and partners were therefore necessary for Doctor Who. I'd already said in an interview that I think Doctor Who will have to become a co-pro. There's no way the BBC is going to fund that. You all also got to look at, in the long term at the end of the BBC, which is somehow, surely, undoubtedly on its way in some shape or on its way out, undoubtedly on its way in some shape or form. What is Doctor Who going to do then? You have to prepare for that. This is, which is somehow, surely, undoubtedly on its way, shape, or form out. Yeah, I mean, it's just the BBC is going down in flames. Everything is going bad for them. So it's a sin and years showrunner. Davies has been a passionate supporter of the BBC for decades and a violent critic of the Conservative government, often calling out the government for the way it has let BBC budgets flounder. Well, that's because they keep putting out a bunch of propaganda content that nobody wants to listen. BBC's own news organization has been drastically accused and proven to be falsifying and telling BS non-stories and just absolute non-truths. They've been flat out caught lying about things, and so color a shock that you don't want to fund that anymore. And the BBC and the British public doesn't like funding that tax stuff either. It's absolute nonsense. So Doctor Who was handed a huge cash injection via the Disney Plus deal, which also saw his Dark Materials studio, Bad Wolf, brought aboard as a co-producer along BBC Studios, a Davies set condition before he rejoined his second stint as showrunner. And that's one of the things. We saw that influx of cash came with a lot of requirements, and obviously Doctor Who has been Disney-fied even worse than what Chris Chibnall did to it already. It's just an absolute abysmal failure. It's a husk of what it once was, which is why on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. we are going back and reviewing when Who was good. A good Doctor Who, when Doctor Who was actually good. We're going through and reviewing all the episodes from New Who, starting at Eccleston, going all the way up to Capaldi, and we're doing that at 6 p.m. on Sunday nights over there on Rumble, and it's a really good time. You should definitely come and join us if you haven't already. So this is exactly what's going on right now. So the show will launch simultaneously on the BBC and Disney Plus in May with the new Dr. Nagati Gatwa at the helm. Davies was speaking in the week, and the Director General Tim Davies has delivered a set-piece speech about the future of the corporation, in which he hailed the Doctor Who deal for being a good example of how we can work to deliver more value through third-party funding while protecting content for UK audiences. So essentially, they flat out admitted that BBC is broke. They certainly could not afford a show like Doctor Who, which is obviously very high sci-fi, has got a lot of special effects, has got a lot of set building that you've got to do. It's an expensive show, and considering the fact that its ratings have been absolutely in the toilet for years now because of Chris Chibnall, then what do we expect? That they have to pawn it off on somebody else? And so Disney decided, hey, guess what? This is a popular sci-fi show. This is something that's aimed at families and kids. Why not us inject a bunch of money into it, and then we can inject all of our nonsense BS agenda-driven stuff? All you have to do is go back and watch the first episode where they brought back David Tennant and the Dr. Donna combo, and it was just absolute abysmal trash, dumpster fire stuff, destroying who David Tennant was as a doctor and completely and totally destroying any love and adoration anybody had for Donna Noble. And it just is absolutely pathetic. It's disgusting, and it's shameful for Russell T Davies, Disney, and everybody else involved in this to have destroyed and done what they have done to Doctor Who. And guess what? Because of that, The BBC is broke, and Russell T Davies had to go on his hands and knees, and the BBC had to go on their hands and knees for Disney for a cash influx in order to even keep Doctor Who going, because it is an abysmal failure. Chris Chibnall and everybody else at the BBC are completely and totally responsible for it, and I'm glad to hear that even Russell T Davies has to admit that the BBC is going the way of the dodo unless something changes.